Good morning, Kelly Victoria. Welcome on VH Berries.
Good morning, Victor. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
How are you doing these days in Los Angeles, California?
I'm loving it. The weather's been very mild and it's been pretty nice. Visiting family right now, so just a little bit inland. I miss the coast. But it's been great so far. I'm glad I picked this spot for the last year of lockdown. It's been nice to be close to the coast and have that accessible.
I would love to discuss about your work and projects directly linked to photography because I believe that your mission is to elevate the art of storytelling.
Thank you. Yeah, do you want me to just start from the beginning?
Oh, sure.
In high school, I went to the Orange County High School of the Arts and I studied creative writing there, which I think is pretty much why I became passionate about storytelling and sharing stories. And I took a film class back when, you actually developed the film. And it was such an art and a science to me. It was a combination of art and science, and those are my two favorite subjects. And so I went on, graduated, and ended up studying atmospheric physics and meteorology, which is kind of a shift. But I grew up in a very aviation-based family, and so I was kind of always around all of that. And I love the weather, studying the weather. I think maybe because I grew up in California and there's such a lack of interesting weather that the subject of meteorology has always been super fascinating to me. So I studied that, and throughout that time I was just taking photographs for my friends' bands, typically for MySpace, and just taking profile pics for people for their internet profile or, their headshots for LinkedIn and whatnot. And I guess I just got good at knowing people's angles. People always ask, how do you know that the shot is the way you want it? I'm like, for me, it's just, I just feel it and I know, it just clicks and I'm like, that's the shot that I need to get. And so after college, I got asked to come work for Pandora and SiriusXM. And that's what I've been doing ever since that, plus some freelance stuff on the side. But mostly I work in music and lifestyle photography. And I think something I've always been passionate about, especially with, curating my Instagram is like you said, telling stories. And I get so many comments of people saying, wow, I feel like I could just jump into this photo, or this photo makes me feel so playful. This photo has such emotion. And it's just like a cat with a sunset in the background, And I think something that I find really important is like a personal challenge on the days that I don't really feel like shooting that much is, there's little stories to be told everywhere. And like the smallest things around you day to day can be, sorry, I just got a Slack notification. I'm going to quit that just in case that sound was on there. I'll start that part again. Anyway, I find I'm really passionate about telling stories about, the smaller parts of life that people might miss. The person that you walk by on a street could be somebody more fascinating than you could ever imagine. And I just like to, for lack of a better way to say it, stop and smell the roses sometimes, because you never know what you could see if you just stop and look around. And as somebody who suffers from clinical depression, there are a lot of times when I have to just stop and be still, and it takes a lot to motivate myself to be anything but still. And it's in those times that I look around and I see small things in life, the minutiae of little things that people don't normally notice because they're rushing around and they don't take the time to stop and look around. And so I think I've just gotten passionate about telling the stories that people normally would miss when they're going about their day-to-day busy lives.
Absolutely, Kelly Victoria, because you started as an early adopters of internet platforms, as you mentioned, for example, MySpace, and starting by taking pictures of your core passion, which is band music, and now you are doing it full time for Pandora and SiriusXM, a broadcasting company.
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. Music has always gotten me through the most difficult parts of my life. You know, I went through a lot of really traumatic things in high school, and it was finding music and, you know, ruining my parents' computer with LimeWire and Napster and the Wild West days of finding music when it was harder to come by than just having a Spotify account. And so it was really those bands that shaped me and helped me through all of these times. And now I get emotional thinking about it because like now I've worked with some of those bands that helped me through those really difficult days, and now I can be on like a first name basis with some of them and have a continuing relationship, taking photos for them and connecting with them. And you know, I try not to be super emotional, like, hey, you kind of saved my life when I was 15. But I think, you know, it speaks for itself when you know, things come back full circle, and I want to give back to them what they did for me. So
that's very funny because some bands are performing in festival in outdoor, so they are into the influence of the weather, which is something in which you are an expert right now.
Yeah. Actually, funny story. There was I was shooting a festival called Governor's Ball in New York 2 years ago, and I was checking my radar, and I was looking at these clouds, and I was like, the festival's on this little island, and there's like one road off and on, and I'm looking at the clouds, and I'm looking at my radar, and I'm texting my boss, and I'm like, I don't think I'm gonna go today. And he was like, why? I was like, I just have a feeling that this storm is bigger than we think it's gonna be, and I'm not gonna get stuck out there with like thousands of dollars worth of camera gear in the mud during a thunderstorm, you know. And so I didn't go, and it was the best decision ever because the whole show got shut down. There was thunder and lightning. The videos are so bad. People were running through the mud, trying to like clamber onto cars to get off of the island. There weren't enough shuttles for people. Everyone was soaking wet. It would have been a complete mess had I gone. So I'm very glad that I paid attention to my meteorology skills at that time. I was also shooting an ice climbing documentary once, and I was trying to tell everybody that the temperature was about to drop and it was going to start snowing like any minute. Sorry, I dropped my camera. I'm going to start that again. So I told them it was going to start snowing any minute, and they're like, yeah, it's fine. And I was like, no, we need to get off this mountain right now because it's going to get dangerous. And they listened to me, and as we are hiking back to the car, it just starts coming down so hard, and we would have been stuck up on this mountain in -5-degree weather had we not turned around. So the meteorology definitely helps with my photography. So, and kind of knowing when to, like, some summers I like to go out to the desert because here we get thunderstorms in the desert in the summertime. And so I go storm chasing, and some of those pictures that I've been able to get on those trips are just surreal. The contrast of the desert and the clouds. And it's been, I'd say both skills really lend to each other.
So, Kelly Victoria, some of the bands saved your life when you were younger, and recently in the year that just passed, there is someone who also made a huge difference in your life, which is Oprah Winfrey.
Yeah, I can now say, wow, man, I'm so sorry. My phone keeps falling. Do you want me to just start that part over?
Oh, sure. Take your time, of course.
Okay. I want to make sure I give you a good video. Okay. So, Oprah. pretty crazy to wake up to a tweet from Oprah, and I can now officially say that Oprah Winfrey has bought me a lightsaber, which I don't think anyone has ever said before in the history of time, so that feels pretty cool. Oprah sent myself and this young girl, Eliana, to Disneyland after seeing that during the pandemic, she and I had formed a bond and became pen pals over the last year because she made a fairy garden and I have been pretending to be a fairy named Sapphire that came to live in the garden. And so we've been pen pals back and forth and getting to know each other and helping each other through this crazy last year and a half. So, yeah.
And can you tell us a little bit more about the beginning of these stories? Because from what I've read, you've been through a very difficult breakup, and one night when you were doing a walk in your neighborhood, you found something very special.
I did, yeah. I was going through a really tough time, and I was still living with the person that I was going through the breakup with, so it was very uncomfortable to be at home. And so I would go for walks and just listen to music and try to get tired. And I came down the street one night and something glittery just caught my eye. And so I bent down and looked, and there was this little door on the tree and a bunch of little trinkets and a note that said, "Our 4-year-old daughter made this garden to brighten your day. Please add to the magic and don't take away." And I was immediately just like teared up by how sweet that was. Because since the start of the pandemic, I'd been wondering, how everything was affecting children. Because my first year of college, I did a lot of developmental psychology classes, and I was, I know a lot about the development of children, and at that age, it's such an important age for them to be socialized and learning things and getting used to, preschool and other people. And with this lockdown, I was like, man, nobody's talking yet about how this is going to affect all of these kids of this generation, And I have 6 nephews. 4 of them live in Norway. And it's been really hard for me to be away from them during all of this. And I had 2 trips out there planned that I had to cancel because of the pandemic. And so I think me yearning for them and their company and seeing this garden, it was my opportunity to make peace with everything else I was dealing with. Was, I'm going to be a part of this. I'm going to bring some magic to her without ever realizing how much magic it was actually going to bring to me. And so I started writing her a letter, and every night for the next couple months, I was just seeing myself come out of my shell again and be excited to create. And she and I just started building this little world together through a letter. She'd ask, what do you look like? And what's your favorite animal? And I would ask her the same. And sometimes she'd ask me, what do your friends look like? And I didn't want to make anybody else have to start writing letters with me, so I told her that my best friend was my cat Nova, and that I sleep on Nova and I ride around Nova like a horse. And then she asked for a photo, and that's when my photography skills came in. And I photoshopped a picture of myself in my fairy costume, very small, next to a photo of my cat. So it looked like I was really teeny tiny and laying on my cat. So, it was just kind of brought me joy little bits by little bits every day. And suddenly it just, she ended up moving and I ended up moving. And so her parents and I had been in contact since the beginning. I left them my phone number just so they knew I wasn't, some crazy person writing letters to their child. And so her mom and I had been texting, and she told me that they were moving and they really wanted to meet me before they moved. And so I made up a story that on their moving day, fairies grow to the size of humans so that they can carry all of their belongings to their home. And so I had a little suitcase, and made it. They went for a walk, and I told their mom that I was meeting them at the tree, and so I sat at the tree, and she got to kind of catch me in the act of moving out. And we finally got to meet and hug, and masked, of course. And it was just like very, very magical. She's so full of magic. Everyone's like, "You're the fairy." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, I'm the fairy," but to me, she's the magical one. She has no idea how much joy she's brought me, and now millions of people on the internet too. So that's when I decided to share that, just kind of a breakdown of the story, and I had documented each little gift and letter that I had written along the way. And so I made that thread and went to bed and woke up and had a million interview requests from news stations and tweets from Oprah and a bunch of different celebrities. And, I think just that time of year, it was right after the election and right before Christmas, and we were still all in lockdown and things were pretty heavy at the time. And I think everyone just really needed that story. And for somebody who like me struggles with depression, hearing all of these kind words, I definitely have imposter syndrome. I feel like I don't really deserve as much of the credit, and, I never did it for any kind of credit in the beginning. But just seeing how many good people are out there, how many people want to be a part of this now, and people have found my photography that way and are hiring me for other photo shoots. And actually, we shared the story at work, and it made my boss cry. So it's been kind of a crazy journey. Yeah.
Not only this story is showing the power of the internet, but it also enforces for me the ideas that we are connecting the dots afterwards. So we need to keep moving forward, because through these stories, you use your skills as a photographer, but also as a writer of books for children, because at the beginning of your life, it was one of your dreams.
Yeah. I've always, this phone, one more time. Okay. My whole life I've wanted to write children's books. I've just always really connected with children. Growing up, all my friends had younger siblings, and like I said, I have 6 nephews, and now most of my friends have kids of their own. And I think just bringing them joy and hearing them giggle can get me out of any kind of funk. And I actually, in creative writing classes in high school, I took a children's literature class, and I won an award for best book. And it was about a little boy that was surfing and made friends with the whale, and the whale's family forbid him to go to the surface. And the family of the little boy, didn't want him to be drugged under by the whale. And so they had this little forbidden friendship. And the whale ends up saving the day, and they all get to live happily ever after. And so anyway, I illustrated it and put it all together, and I won the award for the best book. And so I was like, okay, maybe I'm kind of good at this. I do know kids, and I do know storytelling, and I do know, creativity. So I think ideally I would love to, I'm also an avid video game player. So I would love to eventually combine all of these things, the story writing, the education, the children, and, write games that are interactive for children that are educational without them knowing it, that help them build empathy and creativity and some of those skills. And, if we have another lockdown, so these kids are still getting these kinds of skills, even if they're staying at home and staying safe. And especially for kids that maybe are disabled too and don't have the opportunity ever to go out and have these things. They can get it through a game. Yeah.
And I also believe that your Norwegian foundations of life gives you a lot of inspiration on this very special path.
Yes, definitely. I think I've always really been into Nordic mythology, and a big part of Norwegian culture is trolls and the folklore, and I think that's always been kind of just in a part of my mind, like furniture and little things and tchotchkes around my house all have little gnomes on them and fairies, and so yeah, I think just being around that my whole life, that it definitely inspired that, and it inspired the character of Sapphire, because Eliana, her family is Indian, and so I wanted to teach her while we were in lockdown a little bit about my culture and ask her a little bit about hers, and so we kind of taught each other about things. And when we ended up getting to go to Disneyland together, one of the first things she said to me was, I got a map and I found Norway on it, and I'm learning about Norway, and I'm sorry that you still can't see your family there, but and she just started asking me all these questions about Norwegian culture, and it was just really sweet to be able to give her that, because I miss it so much and I haven't been able to go back. So, yeah.
According to the very reliable source, she asked you 1,000 questions.
Yeah, definitely asked me 1,000 questions about fairy life, and what my skin feels like and where I was moving to, and I had to kind of come up with something on the spot, and I told her that I was moving to a palm tree, and that the sandcastles that kids leave when they leave the beach and they don't destroy them, fairies usually live in those sandcastles once the kids leave the beach. And so she was just fascinated and was like, I'm going to go make 1,000,000 sandcastles, and for the fairies to have a place to live, and I'm never going to destroy a sandcastle again. And so, yeah, now it's just like every time I see a sandcastle, I take a picture for her and say, like, I'll send it to her mom. So.
Tell me about the day that you spent in Disneyland. I'm very curious because I saw some pictures where you were holding the Jedi saber, which is a very powerful weapon.
Yeah. At Disneyland, they have this customizable lightsaber program, and it's really hard to get into. And Oprah managed to get us a reservation that day, and paid for us to get our own custom lightsabers. And she helped me pick out, Eliana helped me pick out which pieces, because you can pick out from a bunch of different colors and customizable handles and things like that. And so she was able to get to be a part of that with me, because they're very heavy and they're big. And so she just got to help me with the customization process. Her parents were like, we're not going to give a 4-year-old that giant thing. But yeah, it's definitely the coolest thing I own, for sure. I stare at it every day while I'm working, just like, man, that thing is so cool. But yeah, we got to go to Disneyland and ride every ride. She wanted to go on the carousel like 5 times in a row, which I was like, you know what, this is your day. You tell me what you want to do. So, yeah, it was the most magical Disneyland day of all time. So forever ruined future Disneyland trips. So
this is very inspirational. And Kelly, Victoria, as the day of today, how do you see this year that just passed? Because at the beginning it was very tough for you, but in the aftermath it completely changed your life, and I'm sure that you had taken some lessons from this.
Wow. So much, so many lessons. I've learned so much about myself, about other people, about the world, about, like what's really important to me and what I want to do moving forward. And I mean, if you would have told me as soon as lockdown started that this is where I would be at this time, yeah, I never would have believed you. I never would have believed any of it. It was just such a dark place, and I had no idea where I was going to be, or, if I was going to be able to keep my job, and where I was going to live. And yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing I've learned is just like taking the time to pay attention to the little things and encourage people around you, and reaching out to a stranger to bring somebody else happiness can in turn change your entire life. And, you know, right now, all of us could use a little bit of magic. All of us could use a little bit of fairy dust in our lives in some aspect, you know, and whether you're the one that wants to give it or if you need it and receive it, like, I don't know, it's also an opportunity to get creative and to maybe meet somebody that you wouldn't normally meet, like a neighbor or something. You know, it doesn't have to be a 4-year-old girl. It can be an elderly neighbor that you may never have talked to before, and just start, you know, checking in on them. They're alone too. So, yeah, I think just I've learned about, you know, how, you know, putting all of your good out into the world, it does come back. And for so long, it was like, man, I feel like I'm putting so much good out there and it just doesn't come back. And I've seen a couple of my friends really get their good karma this year after years of, you know, helping others and putting others first and just grinding at what they love. And it's finally all coming to fruition for all of these people that I love. And it's just, it's been quite a year, you know, which is hard in contrast to seeing how much pain and suffering there's been this year. And it's like, I feel like guilty for having a really good year. I've luckily not lost anybody due to COVID or anything. And I've grown so much personally, emotionally, and within my photography, and my interpersonal relationships. You know, it's really put a lot into perspective. I've learned a lot this year for sure.
And as part of your new projects coming soon in the future, there is, of course, continuing to photograph bands in outdoor, but also new book deals and maybe movie deals on the table.
It's conversation, definitely, that we're having. So I'll keep you updated on that. But it would be really exciting. I mean, if that helps me achieve, you know, my dream of writing children's books someday, if I can get my foot in the door, you know, and give Eliana a boost that when she, you know, becomes older and realizes, you know, that I am a human, it's not going to change the magic because I still love her and I'm still going to be a part of her life. I just don't have fairy wings. You know, the character of Sapphire is me, just without fairy wings, you know. So if it can help her and it can help me and it can continue to bring joy and spread kindness to people, then, you know, all of it will be worth it. So we'll see. Keep fingers crossed.
I'm wishing you the very best to give magics to other people's lives. Thank you so much, Kelly Victoria.
Yeah, thank you so much, Victor. It was great talking to you.